one step ahead, which is basically grouping points together, and then if they move together toward you in a certain fashion, you know it's one object, so you avoid them and you keep going forward. So based on overall outward motion of the points, you can figure out what obstacles are in front of you, and this is how the drone figures out what's essentially is in front of it.
Here's a video of the drone using this method to successfully detect once it's gotten close to this whiteboard and land before crashing into it. This method is, mathematically speaking, much more robust to the kinds of errors in tracking the rate of motion of points that caused so much trouble with the wall ratio and triangulation calculations. But of course, it has a more limited application since it doesn't make any kind of global map. So, in conclusion, object detection for an object of known geometry is pretty reliable, but of course is only applicable in limited circumstances. Monocular navigation, because of the difficulties of creating an accurate 3D map, is very difficult, and it's dependent on additional sensors such as in our case, the bottom camera to give us an actual ground velocity. If you just have one camera, you generally have too little information to accurately map. But monocular vision is reasonably effective at local obstacle detection to avoid serious crashes and things like that. And for both of these methods, lighting and reflections are serious issues. For example, with the hoop detection, if the hoop is too brightly illuminated, the camera can't distinguish the reflective yellow surface from a white surface, and as a result, the contour breaks up and it's less accurate.
All right, and with some more time, we have some ideas of what we would do. So reflecting interference, we talked a lot about that. What we do is remove it, try to look at other points, perhaps based on the intensity of the light, the color ratio. So reflections are generally pretty light. We can avoid that. We would do object recognition. So we can group points together to figure out what an object is, but if we have the points being more accurate around an object, and we can look at the colors, we can actually decide what an object actually is, and that can help the drone figure out what its environment is. We can also look to IoT to incorporate more sensors, such as like putting an Arduino board over here, having sensors facing the side and side, and this will help the drone figure out not only just what's in front of it, but also what's on the side, because the drone, the front-facing camera doesn't look 180 degrees, obviously, so it should use sensors on the side to figure out if there's a wall next to it or a person next to it coming toward it. Last thing we would do is something called monocular SLAM. So SLAM stands for simultaneous localization and mapping. My bad. So what happens in SLAM is that it uses usually two cameras, and it uses a point cloud of the entire 3D environment. So it basically makes a 3D model of the environment around you, and it can figure out where the drone is within that thing. However, it uses usually two cameras, and so far researchers haven't figured out how to use one camera with it yet. We would work on it using one camera, monocular SLAM, using the same methods we used before, using feature points and local ground velocity to figure out what an entire map around you looks like. Right now it's inaccurate and people are still working on it, but it's something that we would like to work on too.
And we would like to thank Mr. Batra for setting up this course and giving us this really great opportunity to do some independent research and engineering work, and providing all of the resources that this workshop offers.
As well as providing us a drone. Awesome, we're ready for questions.
What sorts of other algorithms would be applicable for like a package delivery, I guess, path, and have you given them any thought?
Well, if you're doing package delivery over a reasonably long distance, you can get some amount of position estimation just from GPS if your drone is GPS equipped, which some versions of this Parrot AR drone actually are. But that won't give you the information necessary for fine maneuvering around things like trees or onto somebody's porch. And so for that you need algorithms more like the ones we've looked into. There are different kinds of optical flow that aren't based on feature points, but our attempts to implement those didn't work so well because the methods available were designed to track moving objects within a stationary image rather than track the movement of the camera based on changes in the entire image.
Also, furthermore, when you think about package delivery, it's not going to be like one room to the next room. You're going to have to think about goal mapping. So there are communication protocols. I worked on this at an internship over the last summer. Something called MavLink, basically communicating the drone to a central computer using a different thing than what we use the Python code. And based on that, you can figure out where your goal is, where you are, and use mapping over long distance to figure out where you can deliver your package. That's also pretty necessary for package delivery.
So, other than the cost of a LiDAR unit, are there any other barriers to having a LiDAR-equipped drone?
Well, it's heavier and requires more power than a camera and takes up more space. Like, it'd probably not be great for the drone's aerodynamic profile. Although if it's a large package delivery drone, that's not a big issue. Yeah, if LiDARs were to become much cheaper, there would be a lot less reason to use cameras.
Second thing is that the only LiDARs that we've used have been horizontal laser scanners, and that's not optimal for a drone that can, go to different heights. Kind of messes it up, defeats the purpose. So that's why we didn't use a LiDAR.
And there is potential to obtain higher resolutions with cameras because you can take in all of the incoming light from your environment at a much higher resolution than a LiDAR can scan. But in practice, that hasn't accurately getting a higher resolution with a camera is not easy to achieve.
How did you guys divide up your work? Did you bring different skill sets into the project and work on different things simultaneously?
Yeah. So in the beginning, that's a lot of what we did. A lot of research. I Jonathan did a lot of the actual integration of the Lucas Kahn optical flow. I did a lot of research into optical detection. We both worked on the hula hoop detection and testing for that. Both of us had the same experience coming into this. We both went to the Beaverworks summer camp at MIT over the last summer. I did some drone communication work, but that wasn't totally relevant here, not yet. But we both had the same experience in Python and everything else coming in.
The drone you had to work with only had one camera. If you were going to build your own drone, what sensors would you put on it to make this navigation easier?
Definitely a stereo camera, since there are some available stereo cameras that will provide you reasonably good, basically depth clouds based from the binocular vision. And so definitely incorporating one of those, maybe a LiDAR if it weren't prohibitively expensive would be good.
Just to clarify, a stereo camera is a camera with two lenses, and they work together to figure out where objects are. That's how human eye works. We have two eyes, and they work together to correct depth. I would also, again, as I mentioned before, have cameras on the sides because, you can't only work on what you see in the front. You have to understand your entire environment. So that's something I would add too. Yeah?
So your detect distance is just looking at how quickly points are changing relative to the drone. How do you differentiate between an object that's moving itself or something that's stationary, that's closer, that appears to be moving faster?
Well, our work assumes a stationary environment rather than trying to detect moving obstacles. And in terms of differentiating between a close, slow-moving point and a far, faster-moving point, we know the drone's real velocity over the ground from the bottom camera and the associated ultrasonic. And so knowing that, we can resolve the ambiguity between a close, slow-moving point and a far, fast-moving point. But without it, we can't, and so that's why we were limited to trying to determine the ratio of the distances to the walls before we integrated the floor odometry. Is that?
Yeah.
I have to take it back to it. That's there.
Is it here?
Basically, we have the, if we assume this is a feature point and, oops, and if we assume this is a feature point and this is the drone, and the feature point's at some coordinates x, y away from the drone, and if we know that y over x is going to be the tangent of theta, so if we take the derivative, we get this expression, and we've normalized dy dt, dx dt, and d theta dt by setting dt to 1, or by canceling out all the dt's. And then from there you can substitute in this expression into this term to obtain something, an expression for x entirely in terms of dy and dx, which are known from the velocity of the drone, theta, which is known for each point, because you can easily tell geometrically the correspondence between a point in the camera image and the angle of that point in real life, and d theta, which is the most noise-prone part, which is the rate of motion of the feature point, which is dependent on how accurately we track it between frames. And so you can solve that for, since you have that 1 over x, you can solve that for x, and then you can substitute this in to solve for y. And you can also use the same mathematics to just solve for the distance. Pretty, yeah. Solving for the distance once you have these is pretty straightforward. But of course, knowing the actual coordinates is helpful for assembling them into a map. That's the map behind it. It's a more general version of what we use for the ratio of distances to the walls, because we now have, well, the ratio of distances to the walls assumes that the drone is not moving sideways, and it assumes that the drone is facing directly forward, whereas this takes into account motion in both directions and doesn't make the same sort of assumptions.
Any other questions? All right.
Awesome.